Good morning. Well, the success of Trump last night must have given jitters to a lot many people. I do know that the political pundits were predicting all the time that Trump would not be there. And now they are predicting something more. Well, I'm not as much concerned with the success of Trump as with the inane and absolutely immature comments by the journalists, by the media, by the so-called political pundits, the geniuses, and the political strategists. You see, I fail to understand that these strategists, these political pundits, who are always voluble, vocal, fail to comprehend the basic concepts. The basic concept to understand how a voter's mind works. Actually, I have discussed it in detail today in my article, Understanding the Voter's Mind, how the process of voting takes place. Voting is much too different than either marrying or making a purchase. Marrying can be a bolt from the heaven, making you love a person, or it can be an arranged deal, considering the various parameters of your community and your culture. Buying can be a considered need or an impulse buying. And even then, it's not something which immediately strikes you. Voting is more like a different experience. The mind works in a different way. We are human beings, and we are multiple selves, not one self, but multiple selves. Before I come to the psychological part, let me give you an example. Suppose you want to go and buy a rug for your home. You go to the shop, the shopkeeper, the salesperson show you hundreds of rugs. And all of a sudden a pink rug attracts you, bright color, very vibrant, and you say, okay, I'll have this. But then you stop. That's the first attraction. And that's what happens in voting. The persona of the person immediately attracts you, yes, I'll vote for that person. Then comes the next step. You say, well, would this rug go with my furniture? Would it go with the decor of my home? Would it be sufficiently cleanable? Would it fade? Would it not jar? These hundreds of questions come to you, and you're still thinking of buying the pink rug. And then all of a sudden, you see that there is something which you have just forgotten. You see a blue rug on the side, and you say, okay, let me buy this blue rug. Now you haven't discussed or thought about the decor. You haven't thought about its matching with a wall frame, with the curtains, with the upholstery, with your sofa, with your living chairs, nothing. You just buy it. And you live heavily after. Now this is exactly what happens. The first purchase, a thought of pink rug was an eye popper. And the eye popper led to the process unconsciously, and ultimately you decided the blue rug. Same happens in election. There are half a dozen candidates or more than a dozen candidates, whatever. And all of a sudden one person attacks you. And he may not be the person whom you are going to vote for, but then different people are attracted to the different persona. That is eye-popping. And then the process starts. Can this man deliver? Is he verbose? Is he humiliating? Is he good? Is he reliable? Is he competent? Does he understand the basic facts? No. Those factors are slowly filtered through you. But the process, you don't still vote. The voting is going to take place at a later stage. And as I said earlier, we are multiple selves. At the first step, at the outer self, is the eye-popper element which appeals to us. That was an appeal of Marco Rubio. That was an appeal of Jeff Bush. Or here at home in Canada, that was the appeal of Tom Mulcair, voluble, robust, but eye-popper only, nothing more than that. And then you feel, well, I have got to vote. First, you are feeling who makes you feel good. And then, slowly over some time, this feeling changes. You don't vote for a person who makes you feel good. You vote for a person who can satisfy your needs. The needs of the community, the needs of the country. Well, that can be a mistaken notion at times. I don't deny it. You might repent later on, well, you voted for the wrong person. But your perception of the need of the nation and the need of the country are the deciding factors. And that is also not immediate. Today you might be deciding to vote for X, considering that he can fulfill the needs. A weekday later, you might say, no, it's Mr. Y who would decide, or Miss Y. And then ultimately you decide on Z. And that ultimately happens 3 to 7 days before you actually vote. It happens in about 80% cases. But the moment you go in the booth, there's an eclectic change. And that eclectic change makes you vote in a different way than has been expected. I have seen instances when the people take the ballot paper from the returning officer and they have thought of voting for X. They go in and vote for Y. When they are just putting the cross, no, this person would be better. You know, in my almost more than half a century of being a political strategist, I made it my job to learn the mind of the voter. And then the mind of the voter changes according to the various factors. The community, the culture, the profession, the demographics, the education, the economic background, the political attitudes prevailing over there, and most of all, the hammering of the political pundits that often annoys and makes you feel, what the hell are they talking about? Do they think I'm an idiot? And then you decide just to spite them, vote for somebody else. You see, this is a decision-making process. And this decision is not an impulse decision. It is a considered decision, but a decision that keeps on changing. It's like a ripple. And the ripple effect continues in the mind, and ultimately the small ripples, it's like a tide, you know. The small ripples become a big wave and the big wave and the bigger wave, and then becomes a tsunami when you're going to put a cross on the ballot paper and you vote for that. Now, these political pundits, when I have been watching on CNN, on CBC, when they talk, I simply am amazed at this gibberish they talk. They have preconceived notions in their minds, and they do not know what they are talking about. They think, and sometimes rightly so, that they are aware of everything. Now, in CNN, there was only one person who was always one against all. And ultimately what he was saying came to be correct. He is one person who knows the mind of the voters, the way it works. Now, how the mind works is a psychological thing. Our decision making has two aspects. One is maximizing and the other is satisfying, maximizing your satisfaction. Now again, people can confuse about the satisfaction. Satisfaction can have various manifestations, but they're all combined, whether it's your visual appeal, whether it's your intellectual appeal, whether it's appeal to the economy, whether it's appeal to the strength, whether it's appeal to the security. All of them have a certain level of satisfaction. And that satisfaction is required. Now that is satisfying. And the maximization of that process is also there at the same time. So this goes on like the various beats of a tabla is a synchronization of the musical tones done in a very subtle manner in your mind. It's not a conscious process. It's a subconscious process, but the irritants and the constant hammering of the advertisement can have positive or a negative effect. And that goes in for the second aspect of that, which is called the mental shift. This maximizing and satisfying processes keep on shifting all the time. Suppose there had been a terrorist attack in USA. Immediately Trump's voting would have gone up much higher because he was projecting the need of the people, the satisfying part of the security of the people. Okay? Which others were doing, but not in that manner which he was. He was outspoken. He was clear. He was different. You remember in my book, Technology of Being Human, I have written about this aspect, the art of being different. Trump seems to have mastered that art. And the people who master that art are great. Now coming back to the political pundits and their absolute not incapability of understanding the human mind and the voter's mind. No, there's a difference between a human mind and a voter's mind. Any human being, when he becomes a voter, there's a transformation in the thought process. As I said, where you're going to get married, the thought process would be different. Your mind would work in a different way. When you want to make a purchase, your mind would work in a different way. But when you're going to vote, your mind works at 4 levels. Physical is one, mental is another, and then a wider angle is a country angle, which comes a different perspective. Whether you are patriotic or not is immaterial, but immediately in your subconscious, the thought process, well, he's good, but is he good for the country? And when you talk of the country, then you think of the various needs. You think of the economy. You think of the security. You think of the future of your kids. All these factors combined. And that becomes maximizing the satisfaction quotient. Until and unless the so-called political pundits can understand and comprehend how to calculate the quotient of the mind and how to project that and rather transform that quotient into an actual vote, they cannot predict properly. And that's why only Lord Jeffrey was correct, while others were not so correct. And I could see their sullen, fallen faces and their inability to explain and explicate this undreamt of success of Trump, as it happens most often. People were all thinking that Modi would not come in India, and yet he came. Because the majority of the people are not understood. Now, Madam Gandhi, when she was there, we used to study the minds of the people and act accordingly. The process of understanding the minds of the people was perfected by Mrs. Gandhi. But she failed once. In 1977, when she removed the emergency, she failed to read the mind, but not exactly failed. She was aware she was going to be defeated, though the defeat would not have been to that of that magnitude which it was there. But she understood the mind of the people, and her advisors all four of them, understood the working of the mind of the people. Now, my suggestion to these political pundits would be, come off your high horses. Stop treating the voters with the preconceived notions and the preconceived thoughts. Try to think and understand the working of the mind and the process under which the mind of the voter undergoes the metamorphosis. And maybe then you can correctly predict. Otherwise, you will be making as inane and moronic statements as you have been doing and cutting a sorry figure. Understanding, comprehending the mind of the people, mind of the voter is an essential part of the political strategy. And it is here most of the failures take place. Thank you.